how's it going today? My name's Michelle and I'm also known as Shelly Shucker. That is my artist name, and I am an artist, mixed media artist, and I'm an art educator for community from little kids up to adults. So feel free to join in. This project is kind of targeted to 6th through 8th graders, but really anybody can do it. So join on in. Thanks to Catharsis Media, to APS, and to Any Given Child for making these videos possible. So what we're going to do today is kind of take a look at ourselves and make self-portraits. And so we'll talk about some different ideas about styles and identity and how do you create your own portrait. And it doesn't have to be anything else except for your own. So we are going to go over some different key terms that we use when we're making self-portraits. And so the first one we're going to talk about is identity. And so what is identity? It's about who you are, how you show up. We're all unique. We all have our own genius. And so what is your genius? What do you love? Do you love lots of color? Do you love texture? Do you like things realistic? Do you like abstraction? And we're going to talk about those things in just a couple minutes. But when we're looking at how to express who we are, we think about what we love, ourself, our family, our culture, nature, where you come from. And so then we're going to look at facial constructs, and whether this is realistic or it's, again, abstract, there's still some things to check out, like your eyes have a unique shape, your nose, your mouth, the texture of your hair, the color of your skin, your eyes, all these different things will tell us about you. And you can blow them out of proportion, or you can make them really nice and neat and precise. And this way we learn about you through your self-portrait, and you actually learn about yourself through making a self-portrait. So it's super cool. I keep talking about abstract and realism, so maybe you already know what those things are. But really the abstraction has to do with, could be big, bold shapes. Maybe the face is green. Maybe you have big freckles and you want to make them really big to just make those pop out, and they can even come off of the face, for example. Abstraction, there's less rules, but there's still this foundation of color, shape, texture, and composition. For realism, of course, we're looking at precise details, and we're going to talk about some of those proportions and how to use these kind of general proportions of the face. And it's about line quality too, and how you use your tool, your mark maker, to describe what you see. Let's see, so we're going to do a little bit of technique, just how you're holding your tool and maybe blending, just making shadows, different things like that. So the technique is how you use your material or your medium. The medium is what are you using. The medium is a pencil, color pencil, pastels. Those are the materials we're going to focus on here, but if you have paint or anything else, markers, go ahead and use that. Just use what is accessible to you. And then finally the style. So each artist has a different style. Each person has a different style. Just look at the way that we dress, look at how we talk, how we hold our bodies, and this can be conveyed through art and through how you make your self-portrait. Really let your style come through, and don't worry about what anybody else is doing, what anybody else thinks. It's an opportunity for you to discover and play around with your own style. So now we are going to look at some artists and just show you some different examples over time, some modern artists and some artists that have passed on but left us with their legacy of looking at their art. So the first one is Amy Sherrill. And so you can see here that she is really good at drawing realistically. This pencil drawing is like really focused in on her face, the details of her glasses, her hair. So we know that she can really nails realism. But then you can see that she also takes this knowledge of her realistic studies and into kind of this silhouetted, it's not abstract, but she's breaking it down into different shapes. And so the woman is silhouetted, and inside of her dress are all these patterns. And it's a really bold use of color. So you can see how artists, maybe you're super good at realism, but you want to take that into abstraction. And so you can mix the two, and that she's really good at doing that. Um, then Francesco Clemente, who is personally one of my favorite artists, he uses a lot of symbolism in his imagery. And so you can see there's the double heads. And so the double heads it's kind of like a mirror. And this is him and his partner. And it's how sometimes in life when we mirror the people who are around us. And so he plays with ideas like that on conscious, subconscious levels and brings that into his art. And then this other image is him holding the masks of his face. So there's like two masks in front of his face. And the idea of we sometimes wear different masks or we have different personalities depending on who we're around and what environment we're in. And so he explores these ideas in art. And I think that's really deep and whimsical. And that's kind of the way that I like to go in my art. But again, everybody's different. So we're going to move on and look at Frida, who maybe more people have heard of Frida. And Frida, she ties in a lot of her culture. So her cultural identity is really important in her art. And she's telling our personal narrative. So oftentimes there's a lot of emotion in her pieces. Sometimes she's crying. You can see she has her hair all tied up, which is an indigenous style. She's mixing an indigenous style of Mexico into her paintings, which were modern at the time when she was painting those. And she has parts of nature in her portraits, monkeys and leaves and stuff like that. So again, thinking about where you come from, and you can bring these things into your self-portrait. And then we have two more, and Kehinde Wiley. He is just phenomenal. And actually, if you are in Albuquerque, I think this show is up until January. And they have an online version of the show too, but he is in a show called 30 Americans at the Albuquerque Art Museum, Art and History Museum right now. And he's a contemporary African-American artist that studied the old masters and the paintings that describe the myths of Greek mythology. And he just nailed this realism so well. And now he inserts African Americans, like modern African American people that he knows, people from the street, in urban environments, and then he'll put them in these very traditional poses, as you can see, like kind of Napoleon-esque poses with this real royal attire. And then the backgrounds, the wallpaper is just like very elaborate. So he's mixing past studies of traditional art painting with like modern ideas about where are the other people in art history. And so he's really actually questioning the viewers and like putting this in the forefront of like inserting his own culture in art history, which was unfortunately not part of the popular culture at the time. So that's a very political statement that he's making there. And you can do that too. And it takes a bold person, I think, to do that, but he does it really well. And so Modigliani is the last artist, and he is he's from the late 1800s, 1900s, and he elongates the faces. So he's moving towards the abstraction. His signature is these almond-shaped eyes, long necks, in elongated faces. And then there's a little bit of detail in the background, but it's really about the figure coming forward. And so he's just playing with those shapes and the colors to create a mood. And of course, there are thousands of others of artists who create self-portraits, and so you can check those out too. I encourage you to do that, but here's just a handful of artists that across the board have completely different styles that I wanted to share with you. So I know that might be a lot, so you can take some time to take that in, and while you're doing that, I'm just going to go over the materials. They're really simple materials for today, and you can just use whatever you have. But I'm going to show pencil, paper, colored pencil, markers, and pastels. So if you have any of those things and you want to bring some color into your art, go ahead and grab those things. Maybe some paper towels if you're going to use the pastels, that might be helpful. And yeah, so go ahead and get those, and then we'll get started. Hey everybody, let's get started with some drawing and some fun warm-ups. So let's think about you, and I'll think about me. And so we're doing this so that we can try out some different mark making, try out some different lines, and as we're writing, words that describe us. So just take a couple seconds or minutes to think about things that you love or places you like to be or qualities that are unique to you. So, like for me, example, I love nature. So I'm gonna write nature, and I'm gonna try it out with oil pastel, or if you have a pastel, but just try some kind of mark making tool, and just kind of let your mind get out of the way and let your hand take over. And just have fun filling up your page and just try out different lines, different thicknesses. So, and then maybe since we're doing nature, or I'm doing nature, I'm gonna throw just some little details that look like things that come from nature. And so what else about me? I am a little bit wild. And so I'm just gonna write wild. And myself, I'm kind of heavy-handed, so maybe you can hear or see like how hard I'm pushing, and this is something that's unique to me. Some people might be drawing like this or writing like this. And that's kind of cool. That makes a cool effect that looks maybe like a shadow. And then you can even just turn your paper around, warm up, just do whatever. That's the fun thing about art, is you can kind of just do your own thing and nobody can tell you that it's wrong. Don't let them. Okay, let's see. One more thing about me is, well, I like art, obviously. So I'm going to write creative. And let me try it out with a marker. So here I'm trying out the different tools, the different tools that I have in front of me, the different mediums, and different mark making. Tivity. And on this one, actually, I'm going to use a couple different colors. So that's another fun thing. You can blend colors. You can go on top. And this is creating kind of like a vibrancy. Creativity. And then maybe I'll turn this into like a little paintbrush. And then maybe just try some decorative qualities. We looked at some artists that use pattern. So maybe try out some patterns here. This is just to get used to our materials, our mediums, and just to warm up. And just try to fill the page. I'll write wild again in a different way. So then our warm up is just kind of like this fun piece of art as well. Okay, so, and these are qualities that maybe you want to bring into your portrait, maybe you're not going to. And also in your portrait, I don't think we looked at any artists that used words in their art, but that's something that's fun to do too, is you can write text in your art, in your piece of art, so that's cool. So here's my warm-up that tells you a little bit about me. And so I'll put that to the side, and then we're going to do a another warm-up, which I already started mine. But the idea is to, again, keep trying out the different mediums. And so we're going to do 3 different eyes, 3 different noses, and 3 different mouths. And as you can see, I've done 2 already previously in different styles. Realism, a blend of abstraction, and now I'm going to use my oil pastels to experiment with one more eye, nose, and mouth, and maybe a different style. And I don't really think about it too much. I just kind of let it happen. And so for this, yeah, you can draw along with me, but I'm just going to do one, so maybe you'll need more time. So always feel free to, of course, pause, take a break. We're here to have a good time, and so yeah, if you need a break, take a break, get something to drink, and then yeah, just try using different colors, maybe even 2 different mediums. So actually I'll experiment here with oil pastels. Oh, and here's a little technique. I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, but if you do have Q-tips at home, this is something to grab. If you don't want to get the oil pastels all over your fingers, you can blend with the Q-tip. So there's that. And then another thing is when you're using your oil pastels, you saw I'm going to blow it off, but instead of blowing it into my workspace, I'll blow it onto a piece of paper or dump it off, and you can see there'll be little crumbs of the oil pastels. And then I'll just put this to the side and kind of keep it there to collect those little shavings, those little crumbers. So, and then let's do a nose. And so the thing about the nose is, as you can see, you can make it really flat and abstracted, and I'll demonstrate kind of making one a little bit rounded. And so when you want to create that rounding, let's see, we'll use 2 colors again, and in my last video, which was the still life, we looked a little bit at how to do this hatching and this shading from dark to light. So I'm starting off with a light hand, and I'm just kind of making this downward shape. And then whenever there's a line kind of where the crease of the nose right here meets this plane of the cheek, it might be a little bit more of a contour line, a little bit of a sharper line, and then you can kind of shade that in. And these are just coming out of my mind, and something that you can do is get some pictures from magazines or look online and just look at different people's noses, and that can be a source of observation, realism, and then from there you can kind of just bring it into your own way. So here's this nose, and then the nostrils, usually always darker, a little bit of a heavier hand. And then sometimes this little indentation right here, you can add on top of the lips, between the nose and the lips. And then I'll just add a little orange that's again changing the direction, which is going to describe to the viewer, describe what's happening in reality onto the page. With our color, with our mark making, and there's no mistakes here, so we're just trying things out. And so here's one, an example of 3 different noses, and let's do a mouth. So I'm just going to do a real simple mouth here. I'm just going to use my bright red. I'm going to turn my page sideways because it's just fun, and just make these big kind of, what do we call it? Iconic, big, bright lips. And here I'm just filling it in. You can use your toothpick or your Q-tip here. And then I'm going to show you this thing that I really like to do with the oil pastels. Sometimes people call them crayons. That's what it was called whenever I was in school a long, long time ago. Okay, so then I'm going to use a pencil. It doesn't really matter if there's a color on it or not. I'm going to get those crumbs off. And so you can kind of carve into the oil pastels. So I'm just kind of creating these lines, which is a really cool texture. And it's just giving it a little bit more detail. And then here's my page of 3 different eyes, 3 different noses, and 3 different mouths. Oh yeah, and this one I put it crying. So that's, you know, you can just like be imaginative and have the eyes. Maybe you want to do an eye that's closed. Real simple. Just a crescent shape. So I could go on doing this for a long time. I love little work warm-ups like this, because then I experiment in all these different ways, and I'm not really attached to like, oh my gosh, this has to be like in this certain way, because it's just a warm-up. So yeah, take your time finishing those up, and then when you're ready, I'm going to show you some examples of some different self-portraits that I've made, different styles, and then we'll get started working on the kind of our finished piece. Okay, so here's this one where you can see I did the closed eye and just experimenting with some strokes. This is really simple, so it's like, of course this did not take me very much time, so maybe you just want to whip up a quick little portrait. This is an example of that. And then moving on from there, this one is more detailed. And I think I've worked on it twice, but I haven't finished it. as you can see, but to me it was just kind of a study, and I was zooming in on kind of the eyes and the nose, and then the rest of the parts are left blank. And then this is a shirt that I really love, so maybe if you want to do a put on, or just think about yourself wearing a shirt that you really love, this is a snake shirt. But yeah, just kind of framing the face with the hair and just zooming in with the realism, semi-realism in the eyes. And then here's one that's more kind of expressive and loose. And this is me wearing my glasses. And I actually did this on a Zoom class. I was showing people how to do a self-portrait on a Zoom class. So that was actually really handy to have blow my picture up big on the screen and look at myself while I was doing that. And yeah, just had a lot of fun with the strokes, the way that the marks are being made. And I was thinking of Kehinde Wiley that we looked at before, where he has, and of course mine's not as elaborate, I think he probably spends hundreds and hundreds of hours on those paintings. This was just, you know, I actually looked at I was wearing these cool earrings, these beaded earrings right here, this turquoise, and I looked at that pattern, and then I just repeated it all throughout the background, and even had it come down into my shoulders. Again, that was inspired by looking at his work. So there's that. And as you can see, the colors are, you know, not exactly what my face would look like, but that was super fun to make. Here's one where there's no face. And you might think that's not finished, but to me it's finished. I might like put pattern in that head wrap, but I really wanted it to just be like this, it's kind of symbolic maybe about like who am I or what's happening. There's a lot of transitions and things happening right now that are unknown with the world, and so I think that this is a representation of that, where it's like the face is just blank, and I just looked at the outside of the shape all around me, the background. So there's that one, and this one was marker and pencil. And then here's one in the kind of in the direction that I'm going to start with today, and this is kind of an abstract expressionism one, I would think. Or I would say, and yeah, again, I brought in the nature. I was thinking of the nature, so I have these kind of oak leaf shapes here, and then some geometric shapes with the earrings. This was actually made this morning. So, and then I was really thinking about this spiral of like the nature or messages coming in my ear and then down kind of through my mouth. So it was like symbolic, and there's kind of a shape of a mountain going through. So there's some things that you can maybe kind of identify, but really it's abstracted. And so we're going to go for something like this when you're ready. And we'll talk a little bit about proportions if you want to go for maybe a more realistic style. We can start talking about that too. So get your paper ready and choose the medium that you're going to work with first. Maybe you want to start with a pencil first, or maybe you just want to go for it. So I'm going to just go for it. But again, if you would like to use a pencil and kind of frame it out first, then you can do that and go over it with any of your materials. And again, this is the portrait. This is called portrait. This is called landscape. So it's up to you. Some of the ones that we looked at, they had, like the Francesco Clemente had it going this way. Oftentimes that's why this is called the portrait, is because it's easier to fit the proportions of the face on the page. So thinking about starting here, I sometimes mention about framing the picture plane, and this kind of helps for me because, like I said, I'm a little heavy-handed, and I can tend to go off the page and stuff, and especially with oil pastels, it helps so that I can finish it without getting things all over the table. And so I'm going to put this, and just be, you know, just be brave, be bold, and just go for it. It's just, you know, a drawing, and you can always start over or change it, or, you know, keep working on it. So to get started, we're going to put the face inside. And again, you can think about cropping. Do you want to have it off? Do you want to have it coming off of the page? I'm going to set mine kind of centrally. And so it's a general oval shape. And I usually say just traditionally to ground the head with a neck, unless you're doing it for some reason. But when you put the neck on, it kind of grounds the, excuse me, the head in space. It's not floating. Maybe even like some shoulders. And so, yeah, I have a mirror here. So like I said, you can do maybe a computer screen. If that works for you, do that flip of the computer screen. Um, a mirror can be helpful, a photograph, or just, I'm just going off, I kind of have an idea of what I look like, I think. So I'm just kind of going for it like that. But you can definitely use different points of reference. So now I'm just going to put the ears in. In the ears where there's the jaw, it's a little there. The bottom of the ear kind of comes up from there and a little bit more than halfway. So I'm going to put the ear because that's important in my idea for my composition. And the eyes are about they're halfway down the face, which we don't always realize, but the forehead and the hairline actually takes up quite a bit of this front part of the skull. So if you're going for that proportional, the eyes kind of go right. And for me, with my oil pastels, I'll just draw right on the face because it's going to get covered up anyways, especially with my heavy hand. So I'm going to do, I did my eyes closed, so we can still put the lids. And these are kind of like those Modigliani eyes, the almond eyes. And I guess when I do that shape, I can decide, do I want to do open or closed, and I'll figure that out a little bit later. Oftentimes, we have a plan with making art, and then when things happen, we kind of change. And you can talk to different artists and see what they think about that. But I think it's good in life and in art always to leave room for what's actually happening like right now instead of being so locked into the plan. So that's just my little life advice for you. And so I'm going to have my hair crossing over. And I talked about how nature is important to me. So I'm going to put the leaf in here. And this is really just about also like intersecting and overlapping shapes. And then here's another one. And I'm just going to go right on my face. I'm really into how patterns and solid forms intersect right now, so that's what I'm going to go for. And so from the beginning where I'm building up the background and the portrait together, which I think is important so it doesn't look like the background is an afterthought. So we're building the background and the portrait, the foreground together. And I'm going to put my mountain in, and again, for me, it's going through my face. If you didn't want that, maybe you create a background that just behind it stops at where the face starts. But since I'm blending mine together and I'm going for this abstraction, that kind of helps with that. So I'll go back to some of the proportions. And so then for the nose, oftentimes I look at where the eyebrows are. So I'll put the eyebrows in. And we all have, I'm so fascinated by looking at people's eyebrows. Some people's eyebrows are just so big and bushy and beautiful. And then there's the very thin, fine, lined, also very beautiful eyebrows. It's just fascinating, the different eyebrows. And that just describes the face, you know, and it also is sure tells something about the person, their culture, where they came from, their ancestry, how maybe they shaped them. I don't know, but there's just everything that's happening in the face is telling us about the person. Okay, so then I'm just doing these little shades, little shadow, that planer right there. So this is, again, can be taken either way, realism or abstraction. And then the nose, since I'm doing mine more abstracted, I'm going to kind of flatten it out. But yeah, there's usually a darker part here if you're doing the shadowing in this concave area, the bridge of the nose. And it comes down, and we always, this is the thing that I do often, is I don't leave enough space for the mouth, or actually the chin. So I may have done that again. But you want to make sure, I kind of mark where's the chin, and then the bottom of the nose, and then the mouth is in between, right? So just thinking about these things. And again, if you're using some cross hatching to round it out, if you're shaping the face to be three-dimensional. So there, I have the face kind of laid in. And again, you can put a little shadowing underneath the chin and the jawline into the neck. And then also look at the hairline, especially if you're noting realistic features. Where is the hairline at? How far is it up from the eyebrows? So everything, just like when I was talking about the still life, if you saw that one before, you can catch it another time. It's always about relationships in art and also life. How do you relate to other people, and how are you in relation? And then how are things in relation to each other on the page? Size, color, texture. Okay, so now I have my composition laid out, and like for me now this is really the fun part where I get to start playing with the color and the different shapes and just kind of bringing it to life in my own style. So just, you know, if you want to keep looking at your face, if you're doing that type of portrait, or here you just kind of let your mind wander and your hands make some decisions. And then I'm going to carve a little bit here. This is cool, the light. That's another really cool thing is like once you put the oil pastels over each other, like there's pink underneath the green, and then I'm using my pencil to carve it out, you can see this, the pink coming through. That's cool. And that was kind of unexpected. I have forgotten about that. And so I really like that. And if you have access to different colors, you know, if you have green in your drawing, you don't always have to use the same green. Maybe you use a different green, a different shade, and they're green, so the eye is going to go back and forth between the green. And that's another thing is, even though it's a kind of the portrait isn't moving per se, like I'm not drawing something that's moving, we still can capture some action around the page by the way that we're placing things. And for me, it's about a balance between making conscious decisions, like the green and the red are complementary colors, so that's going to be a type of color scheme. And then just letting my creativity flow through without thinking too much. Because our purpose of making the self-portrait today is, again, just to learn. We can learn about ourselves and our own style by just letting it come out and not overly thinking about it. Oops, I told you I have a heavy hand. Yeah, sometimes when I would go to schools and use crayons, here's a story from the past. I will break the crayons of the school while I was doing the drawings with the kids. That's just my signature. But that's my heavy hand, and I think it's fine because we can still use the crayons. And again, it's just just using different, see now I'm going up and down, and this is going to help differentiate the hair, even though it's green, from the leaf. And here I'm just filling in these shapes that I created, and that's basically what we're doing, whether it's realism or abstraction, we're creating the composition and filling it in with marks. Makes it sound pretty simple, just breaking it down. Oh yes, and I want to do my spiral. So as I start to kind of finish it up, you can take a darker color and really pop in that contrast, whether again, realism or abstraction, just to kind of pop things into place, bring things out. And I'm going to sign it. So if you would like to sign yours and then give it a date, that's kind of cool to keep and then look back on. So November 2020. So yeah, here is a very colorful self-portrait. And yeah, this is something that could take 20 minutes to an hour, just depending, maybe an hour and a half. It just depends on what style you're going for and how much time you have. So that was so fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We learned about some artists. We learned about these different concepts in portrait drawing and did some warm-ups, thought about your own identity, and then made some really cool self-portraits. Some warm-ups with the eyes and the nose and mouth, which is fun to hang on to too. And so thanks so much for doing that. Thanks for joining me today. You guys hang in there. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for chiming in.